So hello. We are going to start this first dialogue with Elli, Scambor, and Mart Busche. I'm going to introduce them first, and then I'm going to explain you how they have organized this dialogue. First of all, Elli, you can see her on the screen. She's a sociologist, and she's the director of the Institute for Masculinity Research and Gender Studies in Austria. She's also a teacher at different universities, such as Graz University, the Applied Science Vienna University, and the Applied Science Ludwigsburg University, also in Austria. So welcome, Elli. And then we have Mart Busche. They are a professor at the University Alice Salomon of Applied Science in Berlin, and they teach on social work and education. They are PhD in sociology, and they research and teach around queer education, prevention of violence, and critical studies on masculinities. So this dialogue is organized around 7 questions that they are going to answer. So do you want me to read all of them? No, I'm going to read each of them first. Yeah. So the first question is can you tell us about your latest research and activist projects related to masculinities and violence prevention with men? And can you tell us if you are carrying any activities specifically aimed at young people?
Yeah, I would start in this case. Thank you for the invitation. Special thanks to Begonia and Baco. And it would have been great to be part of the conference in person in Barcelona, but it was not possible. So, and thank you also for the flexibility to arrange a hybrid dialogue together with Mart. I start answering these questions by focusing on a study. It's a current study we do at the moment in Austria since 2022. Actually, it will go on until 2025. The Gender Equality and Quality of Life study. And it examines how gender equality affects quality of life and also violence or violence prevention. How is it associated, violence prevention and gender equal share of care? This is the main question. The study follows a former study in Poland and Norway. So actually it was carried out almost 20 years ago in Norway, the gender equality and quality of life study, and almost 10 years ago in Poland. And in this study, in Poland and Norway, respondents who grew up in gender equitable households, meaning that both parents were involved equally in care work and also were involved equally in decision-making processes. Respondents of such families were less likely to report experiences of violence at home. So we were very interested in these results and wanted to do a study in Austria. And quite a few years ago, there was the possibility to get economical support for this study by the social ministry in Austria. So the Gender Equality and Quality of Life study in Austria was carried out with approximately 2,300 respondents, representative for the whole society in Austria. And we also did 63 interviews. And I could say it shows gender equal share of unpaid care work and paid work. It shows that this is associated quite strongly with lowest probability of intimate partner violence. So I will point to some of the results from this study before I go to the more activistic part. What we see in the Austrian study is violence follows power. So meaning the majority of the respondents in the current Austrian study grew up actually in family with quite traditional gender role models, meaning that the father had the final say. So when the father had the final say on decision making in the family, and this is what you can see here in the graph on the right side, when the father had the final say, the risk of physical punishment against children is highest. So the Austrian study 2024 showed that the risk of physical punishment against children in families where the father decided alone, he had the final say, was more than 35%. While in the study 20 years ago in Norway, it was approximately 26%. What this graph also shows is if the woman is the sole decision maker, the risk decreases in Austria and also in Norway. And it also shows that when both adults make important decisions together, when they share decision making, the likelihood of physical violence against children is actually lowest in these families. Next slide, please, Mart. So we see that also that unequal power relations in the partnership, meaning now the current partnership, is significantly increases the risk of domestic violence. So the risk of intimate partner violence. What you see here is we ask the people about the final say. Who makes the final decision in your current partnership? And what we saw here is that women responded. If both people are involved, the rate of intimate partner violence is lowest. You can see it; it's approximately 8%. It increases a lot if the partner has the final say. If you look at the women of the female respondents, you see it increases to 46%. This is almost half of them where they say where the respondents, the female respondents, show intimate partner violence. So here we see really that unequal relation foster the risk of intimate partner violence. Next slide, please. So I come with a few more results. We also looked at the at paid and unpaid work. So what you see here is that women mentioned more intimate partner violence when their partner works more or less. And the same applies for men, for example. So what we also see here is that a fair division of paid work, and this is the same thing, the same is true for unpaid work, is associated with the lowest intimate partner violence. Here, female respondents mentioned 6%, male respondents 9%, and you see if this changes, if the partner works more or less, it goes up to 16 to 20% for female respondents and 13 and 18 for male respondents. Next slide, please. So we see that traditional gender images promote violence. So we asked different statements, or we made different statements about gender role attitudes. This is one example. The statement, "A man must be able to stand up against his wife," was strongly denied by 71% of the female respondents and only 50% of the male respondents. This is 2024. And what you see here also, the graph is only male respondents. You see that those who agree that a man must be able to stand up against his wife are also violent, against their partner. And I think we see here where what we have to address when talking about violence and masculinity. So violence leaves its marks. So people who experience violence in childhood, and these are more men than women in our sample, are more at risk of experiencing violence in their partnership, but also more at risk of being violent in the partnership. But also care leaves its marks. Next slide, please. We see that men who grew up with involved fathers are less likely to act violent. This is become also very visible. So involved fatherhood, caring masculinity is a key aspect if we focus on gender-based violence prevention. One study result, another study result gives also reason for hope. Next slide, please. This is that violence in childhood decreases with age. So older respondents, as you can see here in the table, reported experiences of physical violence significantly more often. Here we have 37.5% above 65 years old. So they reported experiences of violence more often than younger respondents. If you look at the physical violence, it's 28%. And in general, you can see here that more than half of the 16 to 24-year-old respondents said they did not experience violence at all in their childhood. So this is a good result for our societies, I would say. The study shows that a fair distribution of unpaid care work in the family not only contributes to the quality of life, it can also prevent violence in the family. So we must therefore continue to work on creating the conditions that enable a fair distribution of care work. So based on the statement, so this next slide, please, Mart. Based on the statement of the respondents, so I said that we also did interviewed with 63 people who filled out the questionnaire in advance, and then we did the interviews. So based on the statement of the respondents in the interviews, factors can be derived that make it easier for people to divide work in a gender equitable way. What you can see here are gender equal share conditions. So we try to figure out what are gender equal share conditions, and we see that people growing up with progressive gender role attitudes or a care orientation, inclusive self-care, as well as the ability to change perspective, to step into the perspective of a person taking care work. All these factors on the personal level support gender equal share. Also, the narrative more than work. So we have quite some men in our sample who say, okay, life is more than paid work. You know, I love cooking and I love spending time with kids and also with my partner and ironing, you know. So they have different aspects in life that make them happy, and this more than work pattern, it's an incredibly important pattern for caring masculinities. Also, on the micro level, we see that those people who share care work, for example, equally, they sit down and plan the care work. It doesn't just happen, you know. They sit down and they really talk about it. Who will be involved in paid work and in unpaid work? And who will take the parental leave, for example. They provide also therefore you need encouraging spaces for negotiation and also for vulnerability. They care for relationship, and they find caring companies. So this is on the meso level an important factor, as well as education. So raising awareness, being educated in this way, these are relevant aspects here. So next slide, please. Raising awareness, as I said, is important, and you asked also for projects or activist projects related to masculinity and violence prevention in working with young people. I start with the very young. We had quite a few European projects in the last year where we addressed caring masculinities as a gender-based violence preventive concept. I start with the early care and the role of man. This was a project where we really produced also material like picture books, songs, videos, games for early childhood education and also primary school, in which we addressed the caring masculinity concept in a wide sense. So aspect of self-care, but also care for people in the near social environment were involved. Professional aspects of professional care work were involved. Community work, social engagement, equality, and also ecological aspects, not to forget, and attitudinal aspects. So we developed a lot of material that can be also found on our ecarom.eu website. Next slide, please. So in all these concepts of masculinities and caring masculinities were addressed, and also gender-based violence was addressed. So we developed quite some change agent projects. One was called Engage in Equality for the 10 to 14-year-old young people, caring masculinities in action for the 15 plus. So these were projects with a peer-to-peer approach where we educated change agents so that they worked with the younger kids on the issue of masculinity and gender-based violence prevention and questions around violence. What is violence? What is gender-based violence? What forms of violence do exist? How do perpetrator victim constellation in all the diversity look like? All these aspects were addressed, and I just can say, and this is my very last sentence, Mart, that we know from the gender equality and quality of life study now how hard it is for people to say violence and to refer to this concept of violence and to apply to the concept of violence to their own life. So actually, quite some of the people we did interviews with talked about violence. They described different forms of violence: material, social, psychological, physical, sexualized violence even. But they had really problems to say, yes, this is violence. Also, here we really have to focus on. So, Mart, the floor is yours now.
Thanks, Elli, and hi from my side as well to everyone. Yeah, I'm taking this up, and especially the sexual part, and I'm starting from the side that feels a bit like activism for me, because I teach at this university for a year now, and we just started to have this impulsory class on sexual education since 1 year in the Bachelor of Social Work. And this is pretty new in Germany. There are not many universities that have that at all. And it contains theory, reproductive and sexual rights, and prevention of sexual violence as 3 columns we are addressing there. And I'm also saying this because I look at France at the moment, and I see what Gisèle Pellicotte had to endure, and what this incredible woman is doing right now by seeing her 51 rapists in court. Some of them claiming they had no idea there's such thing as sexual consent, and if they wouldn't even know how to get it from another person. So I don't want any boy on earth to not know how to get sexual consent from another person. And we have to stop that right now. So teaching sometimes feels a bit like activism. I'm also talking about sexual violence on queer pride, so I'm also on this activist side. But apart from that, I would also like to talk about 2 research projects. One, Elli was also involved it was a research project, Boys' Education and the Prevention of Sexual Violence, Potentials and Challenges of Masculinity-Related Youth Work, Sexual Education, Prevention of Sexual Violence, and Queer Education. So we brought activists and facilitators and professionals from these 4 fields together and talked about concepts. How can these 4 fields influence each other, And what we are lacking is often good material that is intersectional, material that is critical, material that is not reproducing violence and that at the same time is targeting crucial questions. So we made like a little educational film, and in one scene, one of these three characters gets pictures of a girl from the neighborhood on his phone where she's in underwear, and he should say, does it look good or not? And he finds this is crossing his personal limits. And this is something you can discuss with kids, because usually there is this thing, hey, it's nice if a girl sends you naked pictures. It's great. So you're a hot guy, she likes you and stuff like that. And that the boy talks about his limits. I don't want these pictures. I feel intimidated by them. This is something kids often don't understand, and actually adults too. We still, at our university, we still have adults who say when there's something going on between a teacher and a student, well, they are adults. They can just interact as they want. And so this perspective on power and power relations is still missing. So we made this little film. It's also there in with English, Turkish, and French subtitles, and also with German Sign Language. And it's used for teaching kids on what is sexual violence, what is sexting, what is consent, and also it's used in further education for professionals. And then I would like to mention my own study where I did interviews or analyzed interviews with 14 to 16-year-old boys on the question, how do you act non-violently? So I wanted to know what are the non-violent practices among adolescent boys, especially when they had to navigate situations where they are asked to react violently. And this is quite common between 14 and 16. So there's a lot of stuff going on in this phase, also regarding masculinity. So they are called into this category of masculinity, not least by being provoked to react violently. And we know that they are playing the serious games of masculinity as something that happens in the collective, in the group, where they practice and produce masculinity. And there's also something that James Messerschmidt, a colleague of Reverend Connell, calls masculinity challenges. So these are the situations when you get provoked to answer the situation in a way that might be perceived as masculine. So I wanted to know which orientation patterns appear in boys' statements on their own violent behavior, non-violent behavior, reflecting on such situations. And I came up with several orientations. These are only 5 I put here. So orientations towards morals and norms. So non-violence is a good thing. I would never act violently. Very strict opinions. Futurability is what I call, if I am acting violently, this will be damaging my future. So it's in my record and I cannot be, I don't know, a police officer or something because it's written down there. Then, of course, serenity. So if I stay cool, it's better for everyone. A very hard struggle for self-regulation. This I found very impressive. So how they struggle to stay cool and to not get into this provocation, being provoked by hitting back. And I also found an orientation towards de-escalation. So the situation, calming it down, talk to others, dragging other boys out of situations, stuff like that. And where we also find something like care and cooperation with other boys. So all of these frames can appear within frames of hegemonic masculinity. So non-violence does not mean that it's a critical masculinity. So it can feed into performances of dominant masculinities, because I'm the smart guy, I would never act violently. We should not perceive it as the good ones. So it's always very ambivalent. And the question for me was, which institutional or societal norms regulate the economy of acknowledgement and gendered or masculinity challenges? Because acting in these ages between 14 and 16, it's often about acknowledgement, having a place in the world, having a position. And the question is, what can we offer them? Which places can we offer them? And sometimes they have ideas themselves. So Mark here says, this is an example for an orientation towards self-regulation, where the kids show that they don't have sometimes no idea how to do it. He says, if, for example, I were the school principal or something, I would set it up that for particularly violent students who simply cannot handle their violence, first, you sit them together in a circle, talk to each other, and then calmly express their opinions to others. And then, after that, do an hour of boxing, so they can box out their anger. That is a very classical idea of like a boot camp or something, but it shows they wish for something that helps them to channel their emotions, their impulses. So, and of course, we cannot expect from the kids to step back from behavior that saves their life in some surroundings, right? That helps them to keep their head above their shoulders and not going under. So it's a question, what atmosphere do institutions create? Do they create an atmosphere of caring where they can learn different forms to navigate stressful situations? And I would include the now newer forms, for example, for trauma pedagogy into schools or kindergartens, so where you can learn self-regulation methods, for example. And we also have to analyze institutions. So where are these? Kerstin Ollemeyer, a queer researcher, calls it gender checkpoints. So where are the points where the kids are checked upon and where these masculinity challenges appear? So where are the violent situations? Now we have 50 slides. Now we're coming to the second question. So this first was the insight on research.
Yeah, we are moving towards more than less presenting research that they have done before, but more of a very concrete question. I feel we are all very interested in your answer. And the question is this, like, there's data from different countries showing an increase of anti-feminist and gender violence denialist positions globally, particularly among young people. So why do you guys think this is happening, and why or what can explain these resistances of the young population?
Mm. Okay, I'll start again. Sorry, but I stay a bit in the research part, the first part of answering this question. I would like to go a bit back, and I expect that you know the international studies, the so-called Man Box study, which was conducted in 2017 with more than 3,000 young men between 18 and 30 years old in UK, US, and Mexico. And it dealt with the question at that time, 7 years ago, of what young men in particular learn about masculinity in society. And they came to the conclusion that 40 to 50% of these 3,300 young men have internalized traditional gender requirements, and they also came to the conclusion that the man box is quite a violent place. What does it mean, Mart? Next slide, please. Having the last word in relationship, so think about the gender equality and quality of life study results that I just presented. This is exactly what we also asked. So having the last word in relationship, solving problems alone, no need for help, stoicism, not showing fears, it's important, being able to defend yourself, be sexually active, use violence to gain respect, not cooking or sewing, but bringing the money home. These and many other traditional masculinity requirements can be found in the man box. So next slide, please. 1/3 of the young men in this study said that a man should always have the last word when it comes to decisions in relationship. 2/3 of these young men said a man who does not defend himself is weak, and half of the men say men should be strong even if they are afraid or if they are nervous inside. So growing up in an environment where such demands are effective can contribute to kind of an experience of an inappropriate masculinity in oneself and also in relation to others, and can lead to an endless loop of self-reassurance. So questions like, am I still on the right track? Am I tough enough? Am I too soft maybe? We know that risky actions and also violent behavior are much more likely to occur in this man box, in this box full with traditional masculinity requirements than outside. And we also know that some boys have problems building lasting relationship, problems asking for help. In this project I mentioned before, Caring Masculinities in Action, a European project where also Paco, for example, was involved, and we had a big conference last year in Graz. It is a project, it is a change agent project in which we work with all genders on aspects of caring masculinities and violence prevention. We conducted focus group discussions in the beginning in all countries, so we reached quite many kids in the age group above 15 years. And we asked them, what is a real boy? What is a real girl? What is a real non-binary person? And it has been shown in this study that attitudes of boys towards masculinity, violence, and gender equality is very diverse. So next slide, please, Mart. So some argued that men and boys should be tough and assertive. They should show invulnerability and they should fight each other if it's necessary. On the other hand, at the same time, there were boys who said that they stand up for gender equality and respect, that they are able to show vulnerability and resolve conflicts constructively in conversation. So in the spirit of what Rick Anderson described as inclusive masculinity, I would say, some are in peer groups where social dynamics are not based on homophobia or the rejection of other gender or stoicism or whatever. So boys who critically reflect on stereotypical gender perspective described, and this was very interesting for us also to see, the feeling of not belonging and the difficulty of identifying as a boy when they were surrounded by traditional notions of masculinity. So when the peer group was full of traditional notions of masculinity, it was very hard for these kids to say, okay, I'm a boy. They did not want to affiliate. So it was only when boys experienced alternative images of masculinity in their near social surrounding in their near social environment, that it became easier for them to identify as boys. So I would answer the question like this: ideas of masculinity are increasingly differentiated. So for those in the man box, this means that, next slide please, that traditional masculine traits must be reaffirmed over and over again. So sometimes, as I said, in a destructive way. And we see that hyper-masculine ideas of fearlessness and assertiveness are increasingly encountered in the so-called manosphere. And we also saw this statement in our focus group discussions in the Carmia project. So all of the kids in all the different countries knew the relevant player. I don't want to mention this person. I mean, there's not only one, there are many, many, many. But, all of these kids knew them, and we thought, we did not pay attention to that world, in research. I mean, it was, and now we have to hurry up. We have to really focus on this digital world, the so-called manosphere, the incels, involuntary celibates. Next slide, please, Mart. The men going their own way, the pick-up artists. It's a world full of sexism, and it's a world full of hate against women, girls, and also against other gender, whose proponents are role model for so many, especially male adolescents and men today. So probably one of the most important messages that reaches boys is break the self-confidence of women and girls. Then you will get into a controlling position. And this is, I can't answer this question in another way. Mart, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I find this very interesting, and I would really love to discuss it with you. In Germany, we have the same data. Here's just one insight from the Mitte study from the foundation of the Social Democrat Party. And they find the same, in fact, the same tendencies. And I sat together with some colleagues to discuss the question, what are the reasons? Why is anti-feminism and this populism so attractive? And of course, there's not just one answer to that. We came up with these. Of course, at the moment, they're very successful, dominant petro-masculinities. You know who I mean, I guess. That kind of perform this this image of the man of the modernity, being sovereign, being on top of the list. And they kind of are promising that everybody could be like that. So this is very attractive. Coming together with what Elli just mentioned, the incels and the alphas who are kind of doing the same. Then we have this unregulated internet and social media spaces. So kind of missed that to regulate that 15, 20 years ago. Now among the 14 to 24 years old, we don't have offliners anymore. So everybody is online. And right-wing campaigns on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok happen in a very relevant space for the kids. So it's where they connect, where they gather information. It's their space of socialization processes and identity work. So, and even when I go on YouTube, I don't do the other things. I get all this content, right? So everybody gets it. So, and how should they differentiate when they are not educated enough to have parameters and criteria? What is damaging information and what is helpful? So, and we are kind of not cool enough, and obviously not fast enough to offer better channels or better information, and we're not fast enough to deal with media violence. So, and then of course we have all this post-corona climate-related and other experiences of instability. also combined to trauma and vulnerability. And of course, masculinity means to reject that. So it needs more talking about that everybody is vulnerable, that we are traumatized societies. So this is something I find very important because it's something that can connect us. And this can be very attractive to discuss that also with boys. But of course, it means to get rid of this image of sovereignty all the time and invulnerability. And of course, we do this, have this regional populist hegemonies, especially in Germany, in some parts where all of your friends are right-wing populists, and it's difficult to have another opinion. It's even dangerous. So, and this is growing, and I don't know where we can offer spaces, like safe spaces for those who are different. And we have to make boys perceive where they are different and not reject that they are different. So doing this self-research workshops maybe. Yeah, and in general, simplicity is very attractive, binary thinking is very attractive, and complexity is not. So, and essentialism and dual thinking is crucial in these right-wing ideologies. And this is also what Patrick Wilowski's amazing study on the AFD shows, on AFD homosexuals, that there's always this essentialist thinking. So differentiate in good and bad, black and white, and having very clear cuts and knowing where I am and not being able to deal with complexity and ambivalences. So, and there we have to pose offers, I think. So far to that.
Thank you for answering this question. And then we are moving to a more anthropological question, no?
Yeah.
Like it seems that you guys are implying, no, that there's the restoration of a model, no, that is feared to be in decline, which is the real masculinity. And this implies a sort of return to ritualized forms of violence. So what do these behaviors, no, these ritualized forms of violence, what do these behaviors hide? And what sacrificial dimension do they reveal?
Elli, I leave this to you.
Start again. I think we have to have the connection between the individual and the society more clear from an intersectional perspective. So in order to understand the meaning of violent concepts of masculinity, we need actually to address structural and also social factors such as class, location, rural or urban region, the educational background and migration, for example, and other factors that significantly influence the dynamics of masculinity. So I have here a statement of Raven Connell. Raven wrote that masculinity is not synonymous with men or boys, rather it's something that all of us, meaning all genders, actually do. So it's all, we work on this concept. It is a social practice. A social practice that is associated with certain demands. And at the same time, it's not only a social practice that is very much differentiated also, but it is also a place in a certain gender relation in a certain time, whereby this place has far-reaching effects. Think about the gender care gap, think about the gender pay gap, but think about gender-based violence. This is what we are talking about today. So Connell said, and this is a quotation, asked about masculinity, it is what people actually do in the world that has a relationship to your body, but not a fixed relationship. Also, there are different patterns of masculinity, she says. So different groups of men will conduct themselves in a different way, and those patterns can change over time. And that is what we want to achieve in anti-violence work, because some patterns of masculinity do include a willingness to use violence, while other patterns of masculinity are in comparison peaceable. And part of the problem of reducing violence in the world is to shift from the first to the second kind of masculinity. So this is a quotation from a video you can find on YouTube where Raven Connell is talking about masculinity and how it is related to violence. So next slide, please. The impossibility of participating on the top level of hegemonic masculinity forces some to develop alternative patterns of masculinity, and that can prove problematic. So in Germany, for example, I want to mention the study from Susanne Spindler. She conducted biographical interviews with young men in prison and found that body-orientated but also violence-oriented patterns of masculinity are represented when accepted forms, this is how she describes it, are unattainable. So also a study on values and perceptions of their own position in society with 400 young people in open youth work in Vienna. It was conducted in 2016, showed that the patterns of discrimination and homophobia were particularly pronounced among those male adolescents who were themselves affected by discrimination and exclusion. So helpful approaches, I think, to understand this connection can be found in the concept of protest masculinity that was described by Raven Connell. What is meant by this is that specific images of masculinity are overemphasized as a reaction to one's own experience of exclusion. So some also show and perform violence-related masculinities. It is important to not forget the society, because in a society in which the propensity of violence of boys is feared, and really feared above all, this leads to a gain in status, this leads to a gain in social capital, in symbolic capital, this leads to empowerment. So society fears young men being violent, and this is exactly for some men why they do it, because they come in an empowerment position. So this is my answer.
Leave it with.
Okay, so we move to another question, no? So knowing what Elli said, how can we involve men in the prevention and solution of all these types of violence and microviolence? And how can we involve them actively in the feminist struggle without perceiving feminism as a threat or as a loss of privilege, which I think is impossible.
Two questions back. Who is we in this? So how we are positioning ourselves here. And of course, we can ask ourselves, how did we get involved? What was attractive for us? There is this wonderful study of Detlef Pech from 2002, I think, on new men and violence. And he researched, as far as I remember, that they don't get involved to change themselves by just reflecting. It was an experience of crisis. So when their girlfriend said, okay, I quit, I leave you, then they went into therapy or into a self-help group. So obviously it needs some pressure here. And that was the moment when they get involved into processes of change. And so this is the question for how can we raise the pressure, maybe? And it's tied to the second answer. Is it feminism when it's not a threat? So, and does it not mean to lose privileges? I mean, that does not mean that you are not, probably you might win something. So, and in fact, don't we have to change our way of life fundamentally anyway? So I think we can only do it together. This is more a political answer than a research-based answer, and maybe it can lead to some discussion. Yeah, I don't know if we have to make ourselves attractive to people. I don't think so.
Yeah, I just want to add a few sentences. I rather ask the question, how can we address the concept of caring masculinity? Because for us it's a violence preventive concept, and we develop different aspects that are relevant. First, as I think it's, we are in the situation where we name different gender when we talk about gender equality, and we should also address the benefits of gender equality. So this applies for boys, for men. This applies for different genders. So this is one step, I think, which is important to address the benefits. And when I think about the Carrying Masculinities in Action, Change Agent program, where, for example, 16-year-old kids worked with the 14-year-old, and they tried to, they made a list of benefits. They found so many benefits together. And I think this is also the next part. We have to include all of the kids. I mean, we have to, and not only boys, all genders. So the concept of caring masculinity as a violence preventive concept has to become a cross-cutting concept in the education system so that it gets normal, that it's, when I think about the interviews in the gender equality and quality of life study, I still see this narrative of this quite essential narrative of women as the natural caregiver. When she says, when the female interview respondent says, if I ask my partner if he has time on Friday afternoon for taking care for the kid, I mean, he always does. He really helps me. So as long as we are in a society where men taking care are helpers, nothing has changed. Or I also can think about interview examples where a male person says, I've been in father's leave for 2 months. I mean, I am a caring father. I mean, but this is just 2 months. We are just talking about 2 months. It's not a fair distribution of unpaid care work. So we have to include this concept of what does it mean, a fair distribution of care work? How can it be carried out, and why is it violence preventive? We have to include it in all educational settings, I think, and in all fields of society. Also, companies. I mean, we also work a lot with companies on these aspects of gender-based violence prevention and equal distribution of care work. I think these are some statements on that. And when we do this, I think this is why I pointed here to Messner, to the Messner triangle. When we talk about masculinities and all their diversity, we should never forget to critically reflect man's privilege in society, because we still have, and in Austria we have one of the greatest gender pay gaps in Europe and also one of the greatest gender care gaps. So we still have a lot of work to do. We have to question male privileges in society, talk about the costs of traditional concept of masculinity, and never forget the diversity of the different genders, men. So as Mart said, the diversity among men is sometimes even bigger than between the different genders in our society. So never forget the Messner triangle when working on the issue of masculinity.
And still, I wonder, where is the frame of masculinity helpful and where is it not helpful, or this dual thinking? Because if you work in it in the frame of masculinity, okay, then you can always say, okay, I'm a good father because I did this 2 months, because all the men are not doing anything. So what is the comparison? So, and if we try to change individual behavior, I'm wondering if the frame of masculinity is helpful, if it's not the question of what is just, what is justice, equality, apart from the gender frames. Open question. I don't know.
One relevant aspect is care.
Yeah.
So do not forget to address care, because as Nancy Fraser said, care is a human norm, and we all have to deal with care work.
Absolutely.
Meaning, taking care for ourselves, taking care for others, and we should not make a difference between genders. It is the situation at the moment. I don't know if you hear my dog barking, by the way. Sorry. It is what happens. So now in our society, there is a big divide when we talk about care work for kids, for example, as I said, gender care gap, also gender pay gap. But this should not happen. So care is an issue that we all have to confront with. We all have to take care for also ecological aspects, social aspects, and we have to be prepared that at some point in our life, somebody has to take care of ourselves, care of us. So this is all. I think care is a
general problem
aspect here.
Mm-hmm. We have to find a solution for.
Yeah,
go on.
So continuing with this argument, then, how would you consider most effective, to transmit or to educate men vis-a-vis feminism, of the importance of feminism?
Yeah, I mentioned here some benefits that were addressed in our different projects. What do boys and men, and again, I come back to caring masculinities, get out of it? So this is just a very short list. It can be much longer. When we address the benefits of caring masculinity, it allows to strengthen fair relationship, as I said, regardless of class, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity. As I said, we have to address all genders. Also, that one benefit, I think, is that boys and men can express vulnerability and emotion without being seen as fewer boy or fewer man. This leads to an improvement in their self-esteem, self-care, and also mental health. Then focusing on aspects of care strengthens the freedom to be yourself. You don't have to hold back emotions. This is one benefit, I would say. And also care for yourself and care for others means healthier relationship, including a safer sexual behavior, more knowledge about your own body, desires, pleasures. So it's important to have knowledge about yourself, to start with the self-care aspect. This is also described in the book from J.J. Bowler's I Can Man. I don't know the English translation. And he says it's important to start with self-care and to write a diary about your situation as a man in society or a boy in society. And last but not least, I think it leads to reduction as in abusive and risk-taking behavior. Also, risk-taking is an aspect of self-directed violence, I would say. So it leads to a reduction of risk-taking behavior and the ability to accept help, which means a better psychological well-being and also a healthier lifestyle. So this is just a few aspects where I think people can gain benefit from this concept.
Mm-hmm. I'm going more to the prospective side of the question. So what could be most effective, or what can show the effectivity of feminism? What would happen if all the people who do care work strike?
We do it in Spain.
Yes. So, and not only this men-women divide, but the divide between all those who do care work and care for things and people and nature, and those who, what would those do who do not? So, and at the moment there are some books, fiction and non-fiction, on the exhaustion of women, how exhausted they are from doing care work all the time. One by Franziska Schutzbach, The Exhaustion of Women in German, and also fiction by Mareike Fallwickel, which Elli showed me yesterday. So if those who are in the care sector would stop, and that would be an interesting, moment. So, and then I think the effectivity of a feminist struggle would be very visible. So,
I mean, it happened during COVID.
Yeah,
right.
But absolutely. So we know it's possible. You know, it's possible that no one flies.
But did we change?
And no, we didn't. So we are a very heavy, heavy mass to change. Yeah. So we have, I think, 7 more minutes, right?
Yes.
Just Elli, for you to know.
Yeah, we could, I don't know, go through
maybe
this question.
And,
this one. I think you've been talking about addressing this from more like, or an individual perspective or towards individual people, no? We want them to change, but then how institutions can contribute to this change, I think this is a very important question, no? Schools, companies, unions, universities, how can they contribute?
So I came back with the concept of caring masculinities. Here you see a nice picture. So as I said, we work with this concept with different age groups. So and as I also said, when we developed it or worked on this concept of caring masculinity, we actually based the care aspect on the work of Nancy Fraser, who defined care as the basic for social cooperation and also economic cooperation. She says it's a human norm that applies to all genders. Accordingly to this definition of care work by Nancy Fraser, the care concept must be understood in a broader sense in order to meet the complex demands of life, as I said, self-care, but also caring for friends, caring for people in the company where I work, and also accompanied by the rejection of violence. So I think integrating the concept provides, in working with children and adolescents in the education system, can provide a space where they can approach also their future as gently and openly as possible, so without being constrained by the norm of traditional masculinity. We know that there is this sameness taboo from the very young children, so from very young onwards until they are, 15, 16, 17 years old. So they select and they delete everything that is not related or associated with a clear or fixed gender. So we need to overcome, and research has shown that those who learn to pay attention to their own needs, for example, or also vulnerabilities, have found ways to live with them, to not pose a threat to other people's life. This is the work from Pisuti and Wölfel in Austria. And I also want to mention that we did quite some work. Actually, we started our working in our institute with a study on caring masculinities in companies, the Work Changes Gender study, in which also Bakker was involved. And we did this study again a few years ago. It was called Men in Care. And we also asked the question, what supports the reconciliation of paid and unpaid work, especially focusing on male respondents. And we saw that the situation has changed. So many companies made a step forward within 20 years, but this is a very small step. It's a slow and a small step, and there is still quite a long way to go in order to reach an advanced phase of gender equality. So we know how it could work, and also people in our near surrounding in Austria got to know that we know how it works, and so we are invited in different companies, and I think this is a good way to go. It has to also here become a cross-cutting issue in society, and not to forget companies, and educational systems.
Education is more my side, and now we are in the this is the task of the long run, where we need where we have all these little measures of doing workshops, for example, on fostering critical reflections on masculinities, doing media analysis where boys learn to reflect on stereotypes. This is something teachers can do, for example, in their German class or in their reading class. I very much like the second point, promote emotional literacy. So get the language for expressing what you are feeling. This also belongs to my sphere of sexuality education, of course. It also means normalizing vulnerability as something you can talk about, which was very important in this YUP project on sexualized violence, where it was very important for the boys to learn in the workshop that the person who's leading the workshop was a victim of sexualized violence, a male victim, and that this is possible to live with that and look like a normal man. Oh, wow, like that. So there's still a lot of stereotypes on invulnerability and vulnerability we have to conquer. And of course, question power dynamics, provide nonviolent conflict resolution skills by learning techniques, doing role-playing exercises. This is also important in sexual education. How do you say that you don't want to go to the end while you are already lying there naked? It's very important to do that in role plays, for example. And of course, also focus on self-defense ethics, because boys, when they get involved into violent situations, first, always the other one started, and the one who's talking is always defending themselves. So differentiate between unnecessary aggression and provocation, and to learn to distinguish between unnecessary aggression and self-defense. So, and then encourage alternative peer norms by mentorship programs, establish a positive peer culture, challenge toxic behaviors, so learning what they are, what they do, engage families and communities, so also see the surrounding, because a 7-year-old boy will not change the world when the teachers and the parents and the families and the communities will not to work together. So this is also, the surrounding is also important. All the institutional support and policies, so where you can have safety programs and include that into curriculums, teacher trainings, and of course the last point, celebrate nonviolent masculinities, where you can stress positive role models, do public campaigns that are cool and fancy and sexy, and reward nonviolence, which I find an interesting point. So how do you reward something that's not happening, right? To put attention to that, to find nonviolent conflict resolutions, empathic behavior, and make this seen by people and be celebrated. Okay, so far.
Yeah, thank you both for this presentation, because It's
was a lot.
It's been quite deep, and there has been lots of topics, and lots of layers we could entangle. We give room now for questions because we think it's important you guys can participate and open more questions.
Elli, Mart, Maria, many thanks for this wonderful and insightful talk. I don't know whether it has to do with age, with life, with moment, with whatever, but I feel like evaluating everything, every moment, I was evaluating what happened in the 9 years of MIM since we started. So since you've been for so long dealing with the revolutionary concept of care, and caring masculinities, and you've been participating in many projects for many years, what's your feeling about them? I mean, is it too slow? You were mentioning, of course, we're in the middle, or thinking of processes that are very difficult to change. The cultural imaginaries are very, very established. Masculine values, independently of masculine bodies, are everywhere, so they affect all kinds of genders as well. But from your situated and intellectual and practical experience, is that the way? Is it too slow? Is it good? You see that's the correct path for change? I know it's very complicated, but I ask myself these kind of questions as well. I'm older than you, but thank you very much.
Not sure if you're older than me, but I would try to give a brief answer. I'm in this institute now since 2001, so it's already 23 years, and since that time I work on more or less on the aspect of caring masculinities. When I started, I'm a sociologist, and when I started doing this work, and when I talk to people in my surrounding or in Austria, I talked about what I do, some people thought it's a joke. And this is a situation, this will not happen now in 2024. And I think while in the first 10 or, I would say in the first 10 years, this concept of caring masculinity, it had another, we started saying relational gender, so we had different terms for that. But it was more pronounced on the international level than in Austria, for example. And now I see that there is a change going on. I see that in media you can even read about caring masculinities, although I live in a country with maybe one of the strongest gender care gaps and gender pay gaps in whole Europe. You still can see fürsorgliche Men. You can read about fürsorgliche Männlichkeit or even caring masculinities. And when I think about the projects like caring masculinities in action, for example, last year also Mart was there doing the keynote, and Baco, and quite some change agents also from the different countries, also from Spain. We had an audience of 320 people sitting at the University of Applied Science, and I was so fascinated to see that this was kind of a culture of care. They were all, most of them were young people, students and young people, and when the change agents were on stage, it was such a great atmosphere. So I think some things have changed. Also, I think that we did not pay attention to the digital world. We were very late. There are many anti-feminist actors and movements in the manosphere. We are very late, so we have to hurry up and do research and provide actions, provide tools. We, in Austria, for example, have an account on Insta and TikTok together with the women's shelter. It's called gender_van. And this is a term from the anti-feminist movements. We wanted to step into this digital anti-feminist world and provide another narrative. And I think it worked quite well in the beginning. With the first short movies, we had almost 100,000 views. It was really incredible. But now, as we increasingly have more likes and hearts and everything, I have the impression that we came into the gender equal bubble again. We have to go into this space, so we are very late in that. But on the other side, some things, especially in our whole society, have changed. Yeah, it's possible to work in schools and companies. They ask us to come and do workshops with people in leadership positions. So I think it has changed. And I was talking with my colleague Øystein Gullberg-Holter from the University of Oslo a few years ago, and he said, I'm working for such a long time on the issue of caring masculinities, and I think nothing has changed. And I would not say that. There are quite some things that have changed. So we're not only talking at university about caring masculinity. We can read it in a newspaper.
Hi, everyone. Is it working? Yeah. All right. Hi. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. I took away a lot. One of the things is that I work with Men Engage Alliance with the Global Secretariat, and I'll share a little bit more about that probably tomorrow. But we are really also thinking about what we can do to shift narratives around masculinities. No, so I really thank you for the ideas that you gave there on different concepts and wording that we can use. But I also wanted to challenge us a bit on I think what the question was also around. We're talking a lot about changing individuals and changing individual men and boys. But what I also really took away from your presentation is that the pressures on men and boys, on the man box, that they are huge. And they are pressures actually on all of us. When you look at masculinities, are in all of us, no? So I have a sense, at the risk of sounding like a conspiracy theorist, but that there are really big global macroeconomic and political interests in the kinds of masculinities that are being shaped. Mm-hmm. So violent masculinities is really helping, I think, though a very small group of people in power to control a lot of us. And for example, when you look at the military-industrial complex, and the threats of wars that we are now even actually experiencing in Europe again, there's talk about the potential of war even happening within our own region. I think they're keeping the idea of the fear in people and the idea that masculinities and the connection with violence, that men can be mobilized to be violent or have even a responsibility in time of conflict and war to be violent. I think there's really, really big institutional political interest in that. And what I wonder is, what can we learn and do, not just to change individual men and boys, but to then change them to be activists, to demand a different kind of world. Because that's more than changing, changing the caring that you do at home or that you do with your peers, but it's demanding a world that is caring. And I really took away from your presentations too, how can we get there? And I would love to think that through today and tomorrow with all of you as well.
Yeah, thanks to the question for both. For me, that is connected to show all the facets that are new now. And I think diversity, it's often perceived as a threat, but it's a force, in fact. And we need to change the narrative, make all this this power visible. And I agree totally with you that it's it can be easy to have only few very threatening places in the world especially with violent men controlling a lot of the minds and the bodies of the people. So I think this is a very dangerous situation. And still, it's connected for me. What am I doing at home? There I learn what I can do on the street and what I do in the internet. So, and we have kind of to show the ways how to do it, how to be brave, how to get out of the comfort zone and to show and stand up for things and to connect. I mean, I think even, especially after Corona, I guess the longing for connection is still there, maybe even bigger, I hope, I don't know. But sometimes I perceive as if it needs new ways to get connected and to find new ways to organize ourselves. So, and I mean, the truths you are speaking, there are some interests that these truths are not getting to the baseline, right? That people don't get that. So it's the same with the internet. So that all these throwing out of your data out of the window, so that young kids get ads from the military or from all these incel people. So because they are accessible so easily, because this is how social media and internet works. Nobody reads before you go into TikTok. Nobody reads where you have to tick the little boxes, right? Which data you are giving away. So we missed this opportunity, and the internet is not longer free anymore. So, and we have to learn from that. Elli, what do you think?
I would also underline what you were saying, yeah. I would also like to connect here with companies, for example. I mean, also companies in the neoliberal capitalist society, they have a special, what Joanne Ecker called a gendered substructure. Ecker said companies in the neoliberal capitalist system, the basis of the companies are all these people taking care for relations, unpaid care work and everything. So we still face this kind of companies, and it's still the basis of the neoliberal capitalist system. And this is why it's so complicated to change it, because there are men in privileged positions, and the whole system is based on a divide. And it's also I would say it's also kind of I would say it's a violent system, a system that is not interested in equality. And I don't know. I mean, we are working on a small wheel here, turning the wheel on the aspect of strengthening the aspect of caring masculinity, making care an issue for all genders, and all these kind of things. But at the same time, we see that there is quite a power on the other side. So I would underline, we're not talking about individuals. I mean, we are talking about individuals, but it's much more effective to work on the structures, to change structures in the education system, but in the company system and also on the political side. So this is the main part, I think.
Thank you very much. We are on time right now, so we need to finish.